How do we spend less time on the phone with leads and close more deals? Early in my real estate career, I remember when I really started marketing, I would get off the phone sometimes with a seller and I would be frustrated with myself because I just wasted so much time. I had this conversation that maybe seemed stimulating or helpful when I was on it, but I got off the phone and I realized I wasted way too much time talking to someone with no chance of them becoming a deal, or and sometimes worse, I would spend all this time thinking that I was talking to a hot lead only to find out way too late that I was wasting my time because they weren't really ready. So, how do you create a system where you can actually spend less time talking to the people that are not going to become deals and simultaneously improve your odds of getting deals with those prospects when they're actually ready, and do so in a way that does not jeopardize any of the leads that are ready to go right now when you talk to them? So we're going to talk about the qualification process, and this video is going to be a relatively short video. But one of the things I learned early on in my career, and this actually goes way back even to my car days, is that the first thing in sales is qualifying. And when you're qualifying, you're doing two things. One, you're figuring out if there's a match, if you can provide value in exchange for profit of your service or good. Number two, you're setting up the close so that if it is a match, you're going to be in the best possible position to close that deal and have your counterparty feel as good about it as possible. Okay, so there's two parts to negotiations. There's value claiming. This is how much of the negotiation do I want for myself, and this is where people get so hung up. And then the second part of negotiation is value creation. So you're actually working with your counterparty to expand the pie that you're negotiating to claim for, right? So a really good negotiator is going to be good at creating more value and then claiming what they need to claim to have a successful transaction. And so this all comes down to qualifying, because before you can create value or really claim value, you have to understand what your counterparty, that is the person you're negotiating with, in this case, home sellers, what they really want. Are they just seeking information so that they can make a decision down the road when they're ready? Are they looking to sell the house and get as much money as they possibly can for it? Are they trying to sell the house and they want a simple process? Maybe they want to have their situation dealt with. Maybe they want to have a smooth transition where they know that they're getting their cash. They can stay a couple weeks. There's all these scenarios where there's flags, if you're talking to the seller, that it could be a wholesale deal and there's value for you to provide for them. So qualifying is all about listening, building rapport, and setting everything up. And now I just want to spend a couple minutes, we'll wrap this up, with how do you properly qualify home sellers. So now this is going to be applicable if you're a real estate agent or an investor. But what happens when you have somebody and they call in, the first thing I like to do is pay attention to the words they're using. So if they're calling in and they're saying things like, I was just curious what your company does, that doesn't necessarily tell you a whole lot, but it does tell you that they're seeking for information. If they call you and they say, I need to sell my house and I need to get paid like tomorrow, right? They're directly to the point. Like that tells you a whole lot. That's different than somebody who's just asking for information. Now, as you give information, you also want to be, kind of the always be closing factors. You want to be going down the road of the sale. So give them information and also know what information that they need and how you, and educate them along the way as you give them this information. And you should be listening. Again, is this going to be a fit? Is what they're asking and what they're saying, is it a fit with what I do? If not, I'm probably going to be spinning my wheels. If it is, I should really be digging in here and my ears should be perking up, and so that I can figure out how to create as much value as possible in the exchange. And if I do that, then I can probably claim what I need and hopefully I can do really well. And so when it comes to qualifying a home seller, the first thing that I like to do is ask them how much they want for the property. And the reason you do this is because this kind of gives you a gauge. Again, what words do they use? Do they say things like, I don't want to tell you? Do they say things like, I have no idea? Do they say things like a very specific number, right? There's all these different answers. And so I like to get that right out of the way. And that also helps establish credibility because right away they see that you're serious and you're not afraid to ask the real questions, which means you're a real buyer. And so, regardless of what they say on that initial number, it kind of can tell me something, right? And that's very helpful. So I like to get that out of the way and think about asking price in kind of 4 boxes, right? And this applies to anything that you or I are selling, whether it's a house or somebody else is selling a house or a car or jewelry or whatever, right? Like, so the first asking price you might have for something would be a high asking price for something you don't really want to sell, right? Like if you don't want to sell your car and I'm like, hey, how much do you want for your car? You're just going to kind of say a high number. If anything, you're gonna be like, I don't really want to sell my car. What if you are starting to think about selling your car? And that point, you're kind of probably looking at what they're going for, starting to get an idea of what maybe you can expect to pocket, thinking about how much you owe, et cetera, et cetera. But you're still probably going to want kind of the top of the market. Now, what if you're like, I need to sell my car today. I'm ready to go, right? That price is now going to be different. Money's on the table. You're talking, or you've been on the market for a couple of months even, and somebody's here. You finally get an offer and there's cash, and you're like, now you're really thinking about it. You're like, what's the lowest I would take? And then fourth asking price can come after you've already agreed to sell it if it doesn't work out, or kind of like we were talking about in the third asking price, you just keep going and you're like, this is lower than I ever thought I would go, but like this is the situation. I didn't think I would ever be here. It's kind of the 4 asking prices, and it's kind of the time spectrum that sellers go through when they're going to sell something. And so asking price number 1 can kind of start to hint into that. It can just kind of, again, establishes rapport for you, establishes professionalism, shows that you know what you're doing. And it's just an opportunity to take their temperature. It takes 2 seconds. And if they say they don't know what it's worth, you can just ask, what are other similar homes going for? If they say they don't know what they want, take into consideration maybe they're kind of early on into selling their house. And then as the conversation goes on, if they're not, you can go back to that and be like, wait a minute, and maybe ask it in a different way. So I like to ask the price right away. The second thing I like to ask is, who lives in the house? Do you live in the house? What's the occupancy? Now, if they live there, okay, right away, I'm like, if I get to this point and they haven't already told me I'm here, but I'm, blah, 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 I need to sell it. Like sometimes they'll just vomit all the information on you. But if they live there, you got to figure out, do they know where they're going and do they know when they're doing that? So if that stuff's all already lined up, all of a sudden that could be a really positive indicator. But what if they don't? So that could be something to take into consideration at that point. So when and where they're moving, if it's owner occupied, it's going to tell you a ton. Now, what about if it's vacant? If it's vacant, I want to know how long it's vacant. Vacant for a day is very different than vacant for 5 years. And who was the last person living there? Was it a renter? Was it the seller? Was it, what's the situation? And if it's tenant occupied, typically I want to know, well, how much do you get for rent and when's the lease up? And a lot of times too, when they say there's a tenant, I like to find out kind of who the tenant is, because sometimes, and very important if they say it's a tenant, is do you own other rental properties? Because oftentimes they do, and that's going to tell you something. Again, they're an investor, which makes them less likely to sell at a discount, but more likely to have multiple properties to sell. And if they, but it could be that they're like, no, I'm not an investor. I don't have other houses. I never intended this one. I just have, it could be family living there, a friend, some type of situation. So that's something to consider too. A lot of people just think tenants, but a lot of times it could be somebody else living there, and they might even be called tenants, but it could be family or friends. So I even have on my qualification sheet a box that's like, is it family or friends if it's a tenant? Because that is a little bit of a different situation, and it's certainly going to be different going through closing in their mind, especially if that person's moving, than if it's just a traditional tenant. So right off the bat, how much do you want for it? What's the occupancy status? You should know a whole bunch by now, and you're 2-3 minutes into the call. Okay. Now, what if they start asking questions right away? How do you deal with that? Answer their questions and go back to the script. We talked about this earlier. Remember at the beginning of my video, I said you want to answer their questions, help them, educate them, give them information, but you know what they need to know. So keep going down that path. And so like, if they're telling you right away, they want super high price and they're asking you like all these questions, you can start to go down like, it's probably better for you to list with a realtor. Have you talked to a realtor? These types of things. And maybe they'll say, well, no, okay, I do want to sell it quicker. Or maybe most of the time they'll be like, thank you. And you'll save a lot of time. They'll actually appreciate you more. And maybe later, if they get to their third or fourth asking price scenario and it's a fit, they'll call you back. And so this works really good. Even like the leads that come through, if you qualify them right, that like aren't a fit, they will very often call you back later when their situation changes, if you were confident and educated them for what you do and where you would be able to provide them value, so that, you know, if they get that situation. So again, let's recoup real quick. We're 2 minutes into the call. We asked them how much they wanted. We asked them what the occupancy is. Based on the occupancy, we asked them either when and where they're moving, if it's owner occupied. We asked them how long it's been vacant and who last lived there, if it's vacant. And we ask what the lease is, if it is a real lease, and if it's do they own other properties? Because really we're trying to figure out if they're like an investor or if this is just a one-off house that they own. And that could, again, parlay into where it's like actually a family member living there. Okay. Then I like to ask them at this point, like, well, have you talked to any other realtors about selling? Have you talked to any and other cash buyers? Have you gotten any other offers? And simply, why are you selling? A lot of times you might not have to ask why. By now they might have way covered that. But it's important to know these things. And people will shy away from like, I don't want to ask them if they talk to a realtor because I want them to sell it off market, not list it. Well, if it's not a fit, it's not going to matter. If it is a fit, knowing that's going to help you tremendously. So, and I like to even ask why you're selling, even when I assume that I already know, because many times they'll say something else and I'm like, oh, okay, there's more to it than I realized. Remember, we're listening here. We're trying to understand. And on the next call, when we call them back, after we get done qualifying them, if we think it's a fit and we need to call them back and turn them around because we're like, hey, here's the thing. We think this is a fit, but we got to kind of explain some things. They're going to be much more receptive because you took the time to listen, to understand, figure out what they're trying to do, try to accomplish that. And then you're telling them with confidence, look, maybe that's not possible, but here's why. And if they're not ready to hear it, they'll call you back. If they are ready to hear it, you're going to get the deal. So, okay, again, I'll keep recapping this, right? And maybe I'll even share this. If you guys want to reach out to me, I can share my qualification sheet with you. But you want to ask them what they want for it, what's the occupancy, why they're selling, if they've talked to any of the realtors, if they've gotten any offers, and then get the basic property information form. What kind of shape's it in? Just in general, what kind of maintenance does it need? When's it been updated? Has it been updated? Is there anything special? Now, if they just sit here and sell and sell and sell and talk about their property, it's a retail flag, and you can just kind of stop them and be like, okay, that's great. Sounds like it's in really good shape. I'll underwrite it, assuming it's, 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5, whatever. My point is, this is one of those time suck things. And if they're selling on the house, like that's not a great indication. It's not necessarily a deal killer, but I will tell you, like most sellers that just want maximum money that are not a fit are going to sit there and sell you their house. So listening to like them talk about their HGTV features it's just going to kind of waste your time. That's what we want to get away from. But you do want to get the basic stuff so that you kind of know what you're working with, so that assuming it's a fit, when you get off the phone, you can underwrite it, and then you can kind of actually have an idea what it's probably worth to call them back and make your offer. I also at this point like to ask them, and I'm sorry because I'm just going off the top of my head here, not looking at any notes or anything for this video. And I can do this script, guys, like in my head. If somebody calls me and I'm driving down the road and it's a lead, like I can call it and go through the script. And this might happen. I might go like, and not the exact order. Sometimes you're not going to go in the exact order anyways. But these are the main things you want to figure out on this first call. What kind of money do they want? Who lives there? What's the situation? Why are they selling? Who have they talked to? In their mind, what are they trying to do? Now I can get off the phone. I can look at my values, understanding what they want, understanding what they think the value is or whatever. And I can call back and make my offer with the best probability of it getting accepted, which is a whole nother topic for a whole nother video, how to get your offers accepted, and how to set that up all properly. If you do this right, this qualification step, that's the first step for sure. All right, so let's go over the whole thing again. We ask them the price kind of off the bat. How much do you want for it? We find out who lives there. We find out why they're selling. We find out who they've talked to, if they've gotten any other offers. We ask them, are you ready to sell now? If everything was, what you wanted, are you ready to sign a contract today? And this is the big one. This is what early on in my career I would forget to ask so many times. And I'd be 45 minutes into a lead, second call, made the offer, everything. And I'm realizing, oh my gosh, I never should have even made the offer. Like this person's not ready to sell it yet. They're not going to make a decision yet, no matter what. And it's different. Maybe they're not ready to sign today, but they, are within the next few days. This is their opportunity to tell you that, and for you to make sure you understand that. And that's different than they're not, and they're not going to be for, months or whatever. So what do you want for it? Who lives there? Why are you selling? Who have you talked to? What offers have you gotten? Are you ready to go now? Give me a little bit of information on the property, and then it's great. I'm going to call you back in a little bit. Confirm when they're going to be available to talk, right? And if they're like, oh, just text me an offer, just call me and leave me a message. Again, these are like flags. It's like, what? If they're really ready to sell, they're going to be like, oh, yeah, well, you might say, okay, I'm going to look at this right now. I'll call you back in 30 minutes. Are you going to be available? And they might say something like, I won't be available in 30 minutes. Could you call me in an hour, right? That's what you're going to hear most of the time. If you go through the qualification process and it's a real seller that is qualified that you're probably going to be making an offer, they're probably not going to be trying to dodge you. The retail people, they might. And you can use this script, this same exact thing. Don't even be worrying about if they're a deal or not yet. Go through this, figure out these things, have a clean sheet of paper with this. Again, maybe you can reach out to me for the qualification sheet, and you fill that stuff out. Now you get off the phone with a clear mind. You can be like, wait, is there even any chance this is a deal? I like that person. I didn't like that person. They were cool. They were funny, whatever that was, right? Now remove that bias. Is this possibly a deal? Look at it. If it's not possibly a deal, call them back. Say, hey, it's not a fit, and here's why. If it is possibly a deal, look at your values, figure all that out, and then this is a whole other topic, but start to underwrite it and figure out, because the next step, you are going to be calling them back here and making your offer. But just, the point of this video, again, is that we don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking to people that aren't going to become deals, and we do want to set up properly everybody. And so the way to do that is a proper qualification script. Again, to cap it off, guys, if you're a real estate investor, what you want to do is meet and greet, asking price, occupancy. Have you talked to any other buyers, gotten any other offers? Have you talked to any other realtors? Why are you selling? Are you ready to sell now? Totally ready to sign. Give me a little bit of property information. Oh, also, I like to ask them at the end of the call. This is key. I missed this. Right before you get into, I'm going to call you back, you reiterate your value proposition, which is, good timing for me right now, great location. If we can make the numbers work, you might, if there's buttons to push on, like it needs work or whatever, that's okay. But you want to make it that it's a good timing for them, build some intrinsic value here, get the excitement up. I'm going to look at this right now. I'm going to call you back with an offer. With all that being said, if we can make a cash offer work, it's as is and everything's perfect, what would you consider taking after all fees and stuff like that? And there's a couple different ways you can ask this. You can say, what's the least you would take? That's more aggressive, and sometimes that might be appropriate. And there might be other times where you might just say, and this is honestly a good way, if you're getting started until you're more experienced, to know when to be more aggressive or not. But you could always just say, hey, are you flexible on that price you gave me earlier? Again, value proposition. Take into consideration, I'd be buying with cash. You'd be able to pick your own move out date. It'd be able to be as is. I'm dealing with this or that circumstance for you. With all that being said, are you flexible on that price you gave me? And just listen. You're not going to negotiate here. Again, we're just trying to understand. This is part of the qualification. Do they say maybe a little? Oh yeah, I'm super negotiable. What do they say? Right? And then call them back. So greeting. You might have to ask them for the address again. If you don't have it, what I like to say is, hey, I just walked to my office. Can I get the address from you again? That's if they expect you to have it. If it's marketing where they're just contacting you, you can just ask them for the address. So asking price, occupancy, have you talked to any other buyers, gotten any other offers, talked to a realtor? Are you ready to sell now? Why are you selling? What's the property information? Here's my situation as the buyer, and here's why I think that's beneficial for you if you're ready to go now and we can agree on a price. With everything we've talked about, are you flexible on your price? Great. Are you going to be around in the next 10 to 30 minutes? I'm looking at this right now. So as long as I don't get interrupted, I'm looking at this, and I'm going to be calling you back here to make an offer because I'm ready to go if you're ready to sell. It's that simple. Clear mind, get off the phone. That shouldn't take more than 5 or 10 minutes tops. And most of the people that you're going to disqualify in that process, you're going to be off the phone in a minute or two. So it's really awesome. It's great to connect you guys. If you've gotten anything out of this video, please let me know in the comments. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like it, give it a thumbs down. I'll see you guys in the next video. And I hope you guys dig the Candid Sunday my messy kitchen in the background. My wife would kill me for saying that. Sitting on the couch. She's actually at the gym working out, being awesome, and I'm being lazy. And I'm supposed to be taking a nap, but I wanted to ramble about real estate. So here we are. I hope this helps. God bless.